Hi, welcome to my video. This video is hopefully going to show you how to diagnose a faulty Fiat Panda 100 HP ECU light coming on, if you've got the same problem as me. The car's had a couple of problems. One of them, it was revving high when you first started it up. So as soon as you started it, it would sit at about 2,000 or 3,000 RPM, you know, until it settled down. I changed the lambda sensor, that seemed to fix that. But this ECU light I couldn't get off. Okay, so first thing is down here, just to the right underneath the steering wheel. I'll just open the door slightly. You can see there's this access panel. So first of all, you have to remove the access panel, a couple of quick access screws. I think they're Phillips actually. Take that. Next thing is try your cheap and nasty eBay OBD reset tool. Usually pretty good, that, to be honest, for doing most things. However, as soon as I did the reset, it would come straight back on. I'd get the beep and the ECU light would come back on. Okay, something a little bit deeper. It was coming up saying it was a throttle position sensor or a code, so I started to have a look. So the next thing I had to do was get basically on here was this is a more in-depth OBD reader, so you can buy these on eBay. This one's actually an Autel one. Comes in a nice little presentation box and some instructions, and you get a little bit more detail. So I'll try and show you how you first of all do this one. So just by using the pedals, you go into OBD, check engine, and I'll just show you what this was doing. Just excuse the video, I'm going to change hands. Okay, so this is currently plugged into the OBD on the car. So first of all, it goes through. Now what we're looking for is for this OBD reader to give me a little bit more information, and it did. Basically, this told me that it was something wrong with the engine throttle position. Now these cars, the Fiat 100 HP Panda 100 HP, and also I believe the Fiat 500 1.1, 1.2, them sort of cars, they have the same diagnostic system, and I think they've got a sort of fly-by-wire throttle system. The throttle system on this car, what happens is you when you press down on the throttle, it's got a potentiometer in it, well, two potentiometers. Now they send a positional feedback to the ECU. So as you push the throttle down, the ECU is sending a 5-volt signal down to the pedal. It's going around the potentiometer and going back to the ECU. So depending on idle or full throttle, the ECU gets a voltage return back to it. Now idle, it's around about 0.2 volts, I think this one was, and at max throttle about 5 volts. Now it's doubled up, so there are actually two potentiometers in the system, and this OBD reader was allowing me to go through and read the data. So okay, so the first thing was I was going down to live data, and on this OBD2, what you can do is you can actually go down and you can read this voltage feedback from the pedals. Now so I'm just going to scroll down here. Got things like RPM, look, VSS, Spark Advance, there you go, TP, throttle position. So this is throttle position. Now, interestingly enough, I've actually got the new pedal in at the moment, so I'm going to select one graph. Okay, so I've got the pedal in at the moment. Now you might be able to see this is the new pedal. So when I push the pedal down, can you see the rise on the graph? I've got the pedal held. Now let go of the pedal. Back down. Back up. Back down. Now what this is doing is it's basically showing me the throttle movement as a percentage. Now, interestingly enough, what I'm looking for is a nice smooth flat line, and when I push the pedal up nice and gently, I want to see this increase and this rise. If I don't see that, or I see it's not a very smooth line, on the way up and on the way down, well then basically I could have a dirty sensor in there. Now at the moment I noticed with the new pedal in, it's only giving me throttle position. Previously I think that's just the intelligence of the software, it was allowing me to show throttle position sensor 1, throttle position sensor 2, and I could actually read the voltage. I can't seem to get that menu up now anymore. I think that's because it's working alright and it's intelligent enough to not be displaying that to the OBD reader. So that's essentially how I troubleshooted, figured out what was going on with the throttle position. Now it can be and it might be the underneath the bonnet, the actual throttle itself. Now if we come and have a look underneath the bonnet, I'll show you so underneath the bonnet, I'm sure you've already seen this, battery's on charge. We've got the ECU, and underneath the ECU we've got the actual throttle body itself. Now the throttle body itself has got a motor, so when I push the pedal down inside the car, the ECU reads that, so 5 volts, 2 sets of 5 volts are going out down to the pedal, going around the 2 sensors, and they're coming back up here, and they should match. And if they don't match, that's when you get a problem, that's when you get a light on. At the same time, the ECU is then going to send a command signal to the motor in the throttle, and the throttle valve will then motor open or closed to obviously change the engine acceleration. So also in here are 2 sensors doing exactly the same as the pedal, but these are position sensors. There's 5 volts coming from here, going down around these 2 sensors and back to the ECU to give us positional feedback of the throttle. So we're down in here, we demand half throttle, this valve should go half open, and the 2 sensors should tell the ECU that this valve is half open. That's essentially how the system works. So the problem could have been at this end as well, and it might have been in here. Now you can see I've had one of the ECU plugs out, because what I was trying to do first and foremost is when I plugged the ECU in, when I plugged the test box in, what that told me was down here at the pedal I was actually only getting I wasn't getting 5 volts and 5 volts. What it was seeing on one of the pedals was on one of the sensors was between, I think it was 2.2 volts and 5 volts between idle and maximum, and the other one was somewhere between 0.2 volts and 2.5 volts. So what I needed to establish was, is the problem a voltage supply from the ECU? In other words, the ECU output has the power supply inside the ECU gone, and it's supplying 5 volts on one channel and 2.5 volts on the other. Could be a dry joint or some corrosion, or it just failed, the ECU's failed. So I was trying to establish whether it was 5 volts. Now, it's very difficult to see, but at the back there, the pedal, this, if I can kind of get focus on it, this serrated box that you can see just here, this thing there, that's the actual, that's the top of the throttle. There's the throttle pedal, and there's a sensor. On the side of it, there's a electrical sensor with the plug you can see just on the top there. A bit difficult to get to, obviously, on such a small car. The pedal itself's held in with three nuts, loose nuts, so you can take that out. So what I did is I actually got to the back of that pedal. I got to the plug, and what I was doing, I was just basically pinning out in accordance to the wiring diagrams to make sure I had 5 volts and 5 volts, and actually what I did have there was 5 volts and 5 volts. So I knew that there wasn't a wiring problem between the ECU and the pedal. I knew that wire was, the integrity of that was good, and I knew that the ECU was providing 5 volts out on both channels. Now the OBD reader told me the ECU was only reading 5 volts and 2.5 volts back at the ECU. So I figured, like a lot of these things, at some point you're going to take a leap of faith. So actually, this is a Fiat 100 HP, this car, so it's actually the 1.4 100 horsepower. And I actually found, by doing a bit of reading on the internet and Google and all the rest of it, that the Fiat 500 1.2 throttle pedal appears to be identical. Now, I ordered one off eBay, 15 quid postage, so a good deal, second hand. Made sure it was the same part number on the sensor. It was. That's arrived. I've banged it in straight off, and now the ECU problem is gone. So now when I start the car, go straight out. So good. So that's how I fixed this ECU light with a throttle position sensor on this Fiat Panda 100 HP. If you want to ask me any questions on how I fixed it, then feel free. The wiring diagrams, I'll try and get a picture up of the 3 wiring diagrams and attach it to this video. I found them just by Googling and everything else. I was going to try and at the ECU plug, try and bell and see if I could get 5 volts out on the wiring and that, but I couldn't really get into it, and I didn't want to fiddle with them plugs too much, so I just read it from underneath the pedal. Again, a bit fiddly, but easier to do than stripping down the ECU plug. Okay, I hope that all makes sense. I hope it's helped you, and a nice, good little troubleshooting. It'll be very similar for any other fly-by-wire system, I should imagine. You know, Volvo, Ford, you know, everything else. But I hope this helps. Lovely. Cheers. Thanks for watching.